Welcome, James. Thank you so much for your time today. And I'm really excited because you are the first designer on the pod. And I do have a lot of questions looking at your career trajectory, how you managed to do all those things, and designer to designer, some conversation around that as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Akash. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you.
Cool. Awesome. I think to get started, I really want to understand how you got into design.
Well, it's a very interesting it's a very interesting story. So, I actually came. I studied herbal medicine in college. So I actually thought I was going to obviously be in the medical research field, which I was for a few months because I did mine. So in Ghana, when you complete the university and you graduate, you actually do national service. So I actually worked in a lab for a year. But then while in school, one of the things that really introduced me to design and technology was when we do practicals. So we go to the labs, we actually produce medical products and all of those stuff for the course I'm doing. You need to actually create labels for those products. And I already had this interest in technology design and all of those things. And so I decided that, okay, why don't I take the opportunity to actually learn something whilst I'm actually creating these product labels. And that was when I figured out, okay, there is something like you can actually use Microsoft PowerPoint to create really nice designs for labels. And so that was where I actually started. And then I discovered Photoshop and then Adobe Illustrator, which was literally my power tool by then back in school. And even before that, I actually was learning how to code and all of those things. You know, this rabbit hole, you want to learn a language in 30 minutes, you want to do so many things because you just wanted to figure out what you wanted to do. And so that was how I basically started exploring design, just creating posters and then the labels for the products we were creating in school. And I found out about UX design through that process. Yeah.
I think, yeah, everyone got into design when they struggled with or they saw the bad design and then they jumped onto it to solve it. Uh, but
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating. Like you got through like being a medical into that and then getting into design. And that happened gradually over the years, or it was like in the moment, like, no, I think I can be a good designer than this.
Yeah. So one of the things that happened to me was I had a conflict, a huge dilemma because, your parents took you to school to study this, and then you found out, okay, there's something more interesting that it looks interesting. And one of the things is I really hated the hospital. So anytime I go to the hospital, I felt sick. And so to me, it was signal enough that this field was not mine at all. And so over the years, I needed to be in a position where I can prove to my parents and everybody that's obviously trusts that I will pursue my medical career that no, this is something obviously better for me. And so whilst in school, and which obviously affected my grades a lot and classes because I was spending so much time learning design and watching so many YouTube videos. So that gradual process was like, okay, I was actually studying my course, but then actually learning something else on the other hand. So doing two things at a time. By the time I left school in the final year, I already had some experience designing because through that, obviously students would always have something they want to do. So student trips and all of these events and stuff, I was basically helping to design those things. So it took me about 2 years to really get to the point to actually make my decision. And luckily for me, it was by the time I actually left school. Yeah.
And how did you convince your parents? Because I also had similar incident, like leaving what you are doing and then going and telling them, I'm not going to do this, and this is what I have decided to do. So how was that incident?
I think I'm still in the process of convincing because you know my my dad still asks me, okay, so what are you doing to medical? experience or knowledge you've gathered so far. But I think um, my brother has been a big support because he actually convinced me to do computer science, and I did not. And so when I told him, okay, this is a passion I developed and this is something I think I can do so good, he started giving me work to do because he had a sort of like a tech agency by then. And so he's been one of those people who helped me get a lot of work experience to sort of prove that, okay, this is something I can actually contribute to. And so he was a major contributor in actually helping get my parents off my back. And yeah, I still have a lot of convincing to do. Yeah.
Awesome. I think we actually have a lot of similar stories. Like that's how I also started, and I can empathize with you a lot. You need that one brother with you who can, go and take that first uh, hit for you and convince your parents, let him do what he wants to do. Amazing. And
Yeah.
which was the year this was?
I think this was back in 2017, 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh wow! I mean, that's quite early because I believe, looking at the graph, I actually thought it must be 15, 16, or maybe earlier. But I think you have been moving pretty fast. And how, like, what after that? Like, you joined, took a job, or you started freelancing? What happened after that?
Yeah, so I think one fun fact is when I discovered I could do design, uh, I was introduced to entrepreneurship very early. So
Hmm.
and so I was always in this mindset of, okay, I need to do my own thing, right? I need to be my own boss. I need to figure out this on my own because that is the way I can learn a lot of things. And so for me, right out of college, I was actually doing my national service and then also freelancing at the time. And I think one of the things that really helped my design career is I found people around me who were actually already in technology, who already were entrepreneurs and also needed some help with product and design. And so for me, this was just a skyrocketing opportunity for me. And so I think right out of college, I started freelancing, started learning a lot of things whilst coupling that with my national service. And even during my national service, there are these PhD students that usually I assist them in the lab versus other people. And so they get to a point where they need to design their presentation. They have this poster presentation they need to do. And then I
Hmm.
come in and I'm like, okay, guys, like, even though I am in the lab with you, this is something I can also do as well. So I used that opportunity to actually create some awareness about what I could do in the lab. And the funny thing is, the director of the lab at that time actually recognized and then gave me a project to actually do by the time I left the lab, which was one interesting like social media platform that we needed to design and build, which is an exciting uh, story for me. Yeah.
I think, yeah, that's an awesome story because once you start selling your skills, it opens up new opportunities for sure. But
Yeah.
now I just want to jump to how ADPList happened. I'm really really interested in that. I have two questions. One is like how you met Felix, your co-founder, and how ADPList started. I'm really interested in that uh, story as well.
Yeah. I think before ADPList started, which was a really interesting story, I the early parts of my career was really most of that of community. And so you find me doing a lot of like design sessions, joining a lot of hackathons, organizing. And so I think I got more involved when Figma was in beta. So when Figma was in beta, they actually started this learn design in Africa because they wanted to propagate design education in Africa. And I was actually one of the first few ambassadors they had. Um, and so through that, Figma sponsored the first hackathon which happened in Accra. and I attended. I was actually part of the people who supported. And that was actually also what made me an official ambassador of Figma. And through that, we were organizing most of these design sessions, teaching people. And so there was always this thing about community for me. And everything turned left when the whole pandemic happened. And, when the pandemic happened, people were losing their jobs. There were no jobs, even though there were job listings, people were not getting jobs and all of those stuff. And so I started doing a lot of online sessions as well. So by then I learned how to design with Webflow, so design websites and all of those no-code tools. And so I was basically teaching people how to use Figma and then couple it with Webflow to build their websites or build a career for themselves. And then I went to LinkedIn and I saw this Google Sheets thing that somebody posted and was like, oh, if you need a job or looking for a designer, looking for a job, go to do this Google Sheet and then you actually find a job. And so I looked at it and it looked really interesting. And so for somebody who is really interested in helping people figure out or helping people build their careers in design, I thought it was a really interesting idea because, again, we were at a time that people needed a sense of belonging or people needed help. And so I reached out to the person who created the Google Sheet, and that was basically Felix. And so that was the first time I actually interacted with him. I sent him a message on LinkedIn. I was like, okay, this is a really interesting thing. But I think if you are doing something for designers, you want to make it feel more personal. You want to make it feel a bit more polished, and all of those stuff. So I pitched an idea of a platform to him, and I told him, okay, I can do A, B, C, D. So you can leave the tech side to me, and then you can focus on the community side. And that night, Felix and I had about 4-hour conversation on the phone, which was really interesting. That was literally like where everything started. And I can tell you, after that 4 hours, we realized that we had so much in common. We both decided to take a journey together, which basically led to ADPList today. And so the first, we had a conversation on a Thursday afternoon, which was evening for him. And the next day, we hopped on a call in Figma together, designed something, and then boom, that was ADPList over the weekend for you.
Awesome. That's very, very interesting story. Like what can happen, because ADPList is the place for design mentoring. And I remember during the pandemic, ADPList was making a lot of waves. Many of the designers, senior designers, started sharing that they become mentors and they are taking sessions to help out these new designers who are coming in, aspiring designers. And that was something really interesting that was happening that time, because I was seeing ADPList everywhere. But one quick small question: why the name ADP list?
Okay. So the original name for ADPList was Amazing Design People List. So ADP, so Amazing Design People. We had to change it to ADPList, which was like a very lazy way of renaming a company, because we realized that it wasn't design anymore. We were getting a lot of requests from product managers and engineers that, okay, this is an interesting platform, would like to be a part of it. And so we just decided that, okay, why don't we remove the design Amazing People List? And that wasn't working. And okay, how about something really short? So we decided to pick everything off, just keep the ADP and then the list. Yeah.
Interesting. Because I always used to wonder like how you guys came up with the name. And that was something I always wanted to ask, and I got a chance. And how that journey been for you? Like what was, I think that was your first being a founder. How was that journey as a designer also? Because I think you have designed the entire platform. And
Yeah.
how was that thing?
Yeah. I think I would say that was my first official or really serious founder story, because before that I tried other things which obviously didn't work. And for me, like one of the most important things that really gave me the, I would say, the enthusiasm or the hope that this is going to work is really the relationship I had with Felix. Because as I mentioned, we were on a call for 4 hours, basically trying to know that, okay, is this something you really want to do? And also try to figure out what made us or what could actually make us really good partners. And so from day one, I think that relationship was really what made ADPList work. And so having two people who are the passion or have the passion to actually build something for the design community, both designers, it was like one of the biggest reasons why ADPList actually exists today. And then going forward, I think for me, um, being a founder wasn't necessarily the goal. For me, it was really about building something or solving a problem that everyone saw, which was really the issue that pandemic brought. And then also an opportunity for me to actually use the skills that I have learned over the years. And then also the knowledge I have of the impact you can actually create when you actually build things for the community. And so for me, it was an opportunity to actually impact the world and also use my skills to actually and even actually learn more about the things I didn't know about the world. So that was basically
Awesome.
how I saw things. Yeah,
And that, I think, then coming back to the later part, which is in, I think, 2023, you left ADPList, and then you joined Mintlify.
yeah,
How that happened? Like how you switched from being a founder to being a founder designer at Mintlify.
yeah. So I think for at some point I ADPList was really doing so well, and I think one of the things or the one of the reasons for me actually trying to move into Makelify was okay. I was asking myself this question: what's the next step, or what's the next thing for me, right? Or for me, seeing myself as somebody who loves to execute or loves to try new things or loves to do like literally doing something new all the time, like what's the next thing for me in my career? And so I actually took a break from ADP list, not necessarily leave because I still like I'm a part of the team. I actually took a break from ADP list to assess myself as to, okay, what do I really want to do in my life? And then what's the next thing for me? And in that process, I figured out that all the while that I was actually building ADP list together with Felix, it was mostly around, okay, me figuring out the needs around what actually makes the platform works. Also being in the background to make sure that I am supporting everyone in any way as much as possible to make sure we are continuing to impact many people. And then as well, in ADP, it was getting to a point where I was mostly focusing on, okay, how can I help build a more cohesive team, be there for everybody. And so the break I took helped me realize that, okay, I want to be a builder. I want to be somebody on the background who is literally making everybody's work easier. And so what if the next step for me is really to try something new where I'm basically supporting like a group of people trying to achieve something basically that impacts the world. And then that was when I spoke with Han, and I think one of the first things that really made it easy for me to make a decision, knowing that I never want to work for anybody, is again, I literally saw a second Felix, the conversations and everything, and it was like, okay, this is something I really want to do. And yeah, that was when I
Yeah.
made my decision to try and make it.
I think I recently met Han very briefly during the DevTools hackathon, and I can definitely say with his big smile, he can
Mhm.
convince you, or he's really nice a person like to be around. And I
Yeah.
think my next question would be, it's little off, which is, do you think that your being an educator background helped you to become a better leader at some way, because you knew how to communicate things and maybe sell your ideas or educate people or bringing people on the same page as you are. So did that help you with that?
I think one thing being an educator does to you is it helps you take a step back and then look things at as a bigger picture, right? Before actually focusing on the detail. And for me, I see everything as an opportunity to learn, right? And so being an educator really helped me to learn from different kinds of people, culture, and how people want to be treated, and then how people actually see things in different perspectives, right? And when you translate that to leading a team or designing, it's really the same principles, right? So for instance, you want to design something, you need to take a step back. What's the problem you're dealing with? Then you go into the details of it, right? And so translating all of these experiences dealing with people will basically teach you how to basically handle situations or problems when you face them. Also, interacting with more people. When you're an educator, you actually interact with a lot more people, and so all of these things help with your communication and how you actually empathize with people as well. Because teaching somebody they don't understand, you need to take your time to really assess, okay, what exactly is the problem and how do I go about making it easier, clear for this person to actually grasp the concept that I'm trying to portray or communicate to them. And and so being an educator also teaches you how to be patient with people. And when you
Mm.
realize all of these qualities are really just qualities of being a good leader. And so when you are patient enough, or you have the experience to actually learn and deal with a lot of people, it becomes a second nature for you when it comes to building a team. Because the team now understands that, okay, this is somebody who really understands our practices with us, who really understands how personally we feel. It's really not about, and I keep telling people that like your product is really your team in a way, right? Because um, you may have an idea as a founder, but then if you don't have the people to make it happen, you would never have a product or a company. And so that's how I actually see things. And I think, again, like teaching people really helped a lot with being a founder and then also being a founding designer at Mintlify.
Awesome. I think very well said. I can absolutely relate to that thing. Like it's all about people in the end,
Yeah,
and being a leader or being an educator, both the things are directly put you in front of people. um,
yeah.
I think, yeah. And how it's how a founding designer role is different than maybe a late
Okay.
stage, when you join a team in a late stage. What are those? Are there subtle differences, or how's it?
Yeah, so I think think of a founding designer role or let's say an early designer role as a startup versus like a more established company. So when you think about startups, there are so many uncertainties. There are so many things that you need to be scrappy about. There are so many things that you need to do. There are so many hats you need to wear, right? So for instance, think of a founding designer as, let's say, also a founder, right? Where in this scenario, you don't have a specific set of expectations or responsibilities of roles that you need to fit into. All you are doing is, yes, you have a specific specialty, which is your design or product design skill, but then you need to also have other specialties that make it easy for you to support everybody else in the team, and then also make it easy for you to collaborate when it comes to what the company is trying to achieve. Mind you, early stage startups, there are so many uncertainties, right? And so you end up like having to do a lot of things that obviously 90% of those things that you do are not going to ship anyway. But you find yourself in this exploratory um, scenario where you are trying to figure things out, trying to experiment with a lot of things, trying to speak many languages, try to build a foundation of what the company becomes. And then also you have a big contributing factor when it comes to defining the company culture. Because again, a founding designer role is equivalent to the head of design in the early
Yeah.
stage startup. Not necessarily the same, but then it's expected that, okay, you are going to help build that design team or the design discipline in the company, right? Things like design system and all of those stuff. So now you become a leader traditionally in a way. And so you are helping in also building a foundation when it comes to the company culture and then how the company scales, right? Whereas a lead stage designer is, in my perspective or from my experience, is more specialized. Like, okay, you are a designer, so you are doing the things that you need to do. And then also, not to say designers do not contribute, or being like a lead stage designer does not contribute as much as a founding designer. But then I think the disciplines have different expectations. And so those are the main differences I've seen so far. And I think for me, this particular role works for me because all my life has really been about founding something, wearing so many hats, figuring things out, not just being a designer, also writing code at some point and doing some marketing and things like that. So I think it's really a perfect role for people who have like experience and then also want to explore different disciplines as well. So
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, uh, if let's say if you want to like define, let's say, three things which a founding designer must have, like to summarize what you have said, like three things a founder designer must have.
So three qualities a founding designer I think must have is be very curious. You must have the mindset of a young person, like a child, because your curiosity is what is going to lead to the growth of the company. If you are not curious about the problems you're trying to solve, not putting yourself in a position where you are always questioning how you're approaching the ideas the company has or your CEO has, your founders have, it's going to be a disaster because they are also still figuring things out. So you need to be very curious about why you are doing certain things, which obviously is the quality of the designer. But then I think this is the position where you need to question like the goals and visions because they are very early and you want to make sure the company succeeds. So that's number one. Number two, you need to be very good at your craft. And this is a point where being just a designer is a bit tricky. I believe most founding designers often find themselves doing more than just design. And so I think being a founding designer, you should be more than just a designer and should at least understand how systems work, how code works. There are some points you needed to do some animations. There are some points you needed to do marketing design and things like that. And so doing just UX UI or just product UI design isn't going to cut it for you if you want to be very impactful and successful. And then the third thing is really have some leadership qualities, because this is a point where, as I mentioned, your participation, your contributions help build a good culture in that company, right? And so if you have a problem dealing with people, or you have a problem like leading people, it's going to be very difficult for the team to actually scale or you build a design discipline in the company because obviously the founder is going to trust you that, look, James, you need to actually, there's going to be a point where we need to hire more designers, right? Or there is going to be a point where you work with designers in an agency or design partners, right? You need to manage that relationship. And so it's something that you are required of. And I think as a founding designer, I should have these qualities. Obviously, there are lots more, but I think these are the most important things.
Yeah, I think the one another important quality would be, that is what I think, and this is my favorite topic to discuss with every designer, is designer developer relationship. Uh, what you have to say about it, like how you manage that?
I think one of when I was having when I think in a week when I was having a conversation with the Mintlify team, Hannah and B, joining the company. I think one of the things that made it easy for me and the team to make a decision was the communication collaborative process, especially with the engineers. and I think this is very, very important, right? As a designer, design versus engineering or development or coding, right? Design is a fairly new discipline, right? And so as designers, we constantly find ourselves in a position where we have to give reasons why we are needed in a way, right? Or we find ourselves in a position to give reasons why this experience is going to work. And so as a designer, you need to build a vocabulary around how you are going to communicate with these developers, right? And that's why I always tell designers, look, it doesn't take anything away from you to understanding how code works in general, okay? Because that is the first language. If I'm designing a button and I design some weird angular borders or something like that, right? Basically, what am I trying to communicate? For the developer, this is just extra work, right? Because can we just not have a square shape button or a rounded shape button? What's this weird angle for, right? Because that's an extra line of code for him to write. But then as a designer, if you understand the emotions, you understand the work it takes to actually make some of these things happen, you begin to make better decisions. And then the better decisions that you make, it's easier for you to actually communicate with developers why you need certain things to be done, right? And so I think that's the first thing. Understand their language, not to say you need to learn how to develop a C# or anything. Just understand how system works, how code works and things like that. Another thing is really being able to actually also empathize with engineers. Because again, like most designers do not understand or do not know how difficult it is to build something, right? Especially for instance, front end logic, right? Most designers do not understand how difficult it is to actually work on different states of let's say, even like a user interface or a card or anything. And so they end up designing different things with less consistency, no consistency or anything, right? And so being empathetic basically means that you design with consistency, which makes it easy for everybody to actually understand what you are trying to do. And then the more consistent you are with your design, which again brings the topic of design system, the easier it is for everybody to work cohesively as a team. But if you design today and the design is different, the next day you are using a different border radius, like everything is all over the place. It feels like, okay, you don't care about how everybody feels, or you don't care about what it takes to actually make things like this happen. And that really affects the relationship you have with engineers as well. And so I think like really understanding the language, being more empathetic, and then communicating more. I think over communication is really never a sin. It's actually very good for teams. And so communicating to designers more often, explaining and trying to understand what they think as well, or getting their opinions as well really helps. Again, designers feel like we are the experts. And so sometimes we need to make decisions for everybody. But you'd be surprised how many engineers even have more product sense than you do. Yeah.
And at what stage of designing process you involve developers uh, into your design process?
Yeah. Very early on, even before I put pixels to paper or anything. Yeah. And the reason
Yeah,
why I
and
do this, is there are times where, let's say for an early designer, let's say for a designer, sometimes there's already a product before you join the team. So you would need to understand what exists and then what is missing and what is being done right now, right? So that's why you need to involve them in early.
yeah, I think most of the time designers miss this point for some reason, and then I think this is one of the very important thing to build that relationship with developers. That is what that is what worked for me as well.
Yeah.
um, cool. I think my next question would be like, how's your day look like as a founding designer at Mintlify? What exactly you do?
Okay. I mean, just like the name suggests, you are like part of the founding team, and what's expected of a founder is expected of you, in a way. But I think my typical day is really about, okay, what are the things that I need to know, or what are the things that are happening across the products or across all teams. So first thing is really to just keep myself updated with what's happening. And I think that the good thing about being a founding designer is really you have access to everything. Engineering channels, bugs, customer success, and all of those things. And so the first thing I do is really what's happening everywhere, right? It's not my job, but it's my job. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is really what's next for the company. You I think as a founding designer, you constantly find yourself in a position where you have to sort of propose um, some ideas or concepts to what you are trying to do as a company. Obviously, the company has its roadmap, the set of things they want to focus on, but there are times where the expectation is, okay, how can you just make the product better? Or how can you, what's the next thing we need to do? Or what do you think about the roadmap? Does it even make sense anymore? And in a startup, things change drastically. You can have a roadmap today and the next day everything changes completely. And that's something you need to be very aware of. So I try to figure out, okay, strategically, what are some of the decisions I need to make? Or what are some of the things I need to pick up and think about to help the founders move this company forward? The next thing is really, which is literally what I do all day, is really spend so much time in Figma. We try to push rectangles around just to make them look good. And that's like most part of the day for me. And beyond that, there are just like meetings and that's typically what a day looks like for me.
Because you have this such an extensive experience, I think being a founder and founding designer, I want you, like, what is your advice to the designers who, how they contribute to the product roadmap of the company? What are those things they should be focusing on while doing that?
Yeah, I think first thing is like designers, again, whether founding designer or not, you need to have something that's, again, for future sake, right? So for instance, if you are looking for a job, you need to have something specific that is actually your idea. Okay. And that's something I tell people, because when you are looking for your next role, people, for instance, if I'm hiring, I want to know how much impact or what impact or legacy you left in your previous company. If you can't tell me any idea that is really yours, I really don't think, again, you might be necessarily suitable for a startup or a team that is like really starting out that is going to rely on you for those kind of like skills or expectations. So that's one thing I tell people. And this is solely my opinion and something that has helped me in my career as well. Another thing that I always advise designers to do is build their craft. Again, it's so easy to go to Twitter today and see so many people talking about so many different things that they are not very experienced about. It's so easy to see so many designers like saying everybody has an opinion these days. And I think designers should really, especially young designers, should really focus on building craft. Because the more you build your craft, the more you get to experience a lot of things, and the more you begin to figure out why you actually need to keep quiet and then just focus on your craft, right? So I was talking to somebody and we're talking about this Dunning-Kruger effect, where at the early stage you think you know so much, so it has a cliff period, and then you start encountering more difficult or more complex scenario and realize that, okay, I really do not know anything. And the moment you reach that point, you realize, and that's what we call the valley of doom, we realize that, okay, I really don't know anything. And that's where people start getting imposter syndrome and all of those stuff. And I think, but then when you focus on building craft, when you focus on really being curious and then continually learning, you really figure out a lot of things. And so that curiosity will never basically die out, right? So starting early, very curious about so many things, you gain a little experience, then you lose that curiosity, you feel like you know so much, then you end up in the valley of doom. When you basically leave space for that curiosity to always exist as a designer, you realize that really helps your career build experience and a lot of things. Another thing is obviously mentorship is very important because I believe for me, obviously, I've not had the privilege that a lot of designers have today, because there are so many platforms like ADPList that exist for you to speak to people, to learn from them. I think I always tell people mentorship is really a cheat sheet or a shortcut for you to actually build a really good career, because the mistakes that I made or the mistakes that you made, they can actually learn from that and make them better, right? So instead of them spending the last 5-6 years trying to figure something out, they can just have a conversation with you and then be open to learning and can figure out a solution away or across that particular obstacle that they have. And so mentorship is very, very important for everybody in their career, whether early or senior or anything. And then I think the final thing is always put your work out there and be open to feedback or criticism, because that's the only way you can actually grow. If no one sees your work, um, I mean, your opinions are yours only. But then if you open up and show your work to other people to actually share that feedback, that's the only way you can actually build your craft.
Yeah, I think awesome. That makes a lot of sense, and most of the advice is
Yeah.
seems very obvious, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's very very difficult to implement when you are actually doing it. I just have like a couple of last questions. One is, while as a designer, how do
Yeah.
you sell your design? Like how you build that hypothesis, how you back up your design decision and sell it to other stakeholders? Maybe it's developers, maybe it's your founders, you
Yeah.
being a founding designer. How you prepare yourself when you are proposing something?
Yeah. Okay. I think I mentioned something is one of the reasons why ADPList worked was we're solving a problem everybody was seeing, right? And so it's so easy to solve like a problem that everybody sees. Okay. And so if you go to people with abstract concepts or things that may exist but are not very visible, people are not going to listen to you. Okay. And so I think the first thing to do is make sure the problem you are solving is actually something that is very obvious, which also ties into whether or not the problem exists or not. Now, once the problem is obvious, I think one of the things you need to also do as a designer when you are trying to sell your ideas or your concepts to your team is, now this is an obvious problem, but what are the things or what are the factors surrounding this problem that others are not seeing, right? What are the things that are going to help me create that aha moment? Okay. And so these are the unobvious stuff or invisible stuff that most people are going to just, okay, every day we do things out of habit, but then there are so many things that we ignore because we think are just common stuff. And then these are things that most people do not see. And so when you are able to figure out those things around the problem that a lot of people are ignoring, that adds value to the solution that you offer. Okay. And so for instance, we know that, okay, the most obvious solution to, let's say, heat is probably having maybe something that cools you down, right? But then whilst everybody is thinking of, okay, an AC or something, they are ignoring the fact that, okay, not everybody can afford an AC. Not everybody can do this and that. These are the invisible problems that most people don't think about when they are implementing solutions. So once you start thinking about those things, then people realize that, okay, this is actually something that is very smart. Now, beyond that, again, back to visibility, you need to present those ideas in a format that everybody, again, this is now literal seeing, right? So you need to present your ideas. So for instance, if I have an idea for a new feature, is there a way I can design it, right? Maybe in a more polished manner. Because again, like, there are times that, yes, we know there are wireframes and all of those stuff, but in reality, I can tell you that I can actually count the number of times I design in wireframes. No one really does that, right? And so how do you present your ideas in a more polished manner where people can actually appreciate those tangibles? And so this can be in a presentation format, it can be in a Figma prototype, or even you can actually build if you have the experience to build it. And then storytelling is very important. And so how come or why did you arrive at this scenario? Why did you make the decision? And storytelling communication is part of this, being able to articulate your points in a manner that your team can appreciate, right? And also put them in a position where they can actually perceive, okay, what problems the customers are facing really helps you to put your points across. And so these are basically things that I often do to make sure that I'm able to sell my design. Again, let me give you an example. We recently were experimenting with a way to explore how people can actually talk to your developer documentation. And this is a personal project that I I had a conversation with Hanbi, co-founder, and she was like, okay, she actually mentioned it. I was like, this is a cool idea. And I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out a way to pitch this to you guys, right? And so I actually designed a UI, implemented some part of the UI, and got a friend to help me. So I'm not very good at animation, but I got a friend to actually do a killer video of that. And it's like literally one of the most exciting things we are literally like thinking about right now. And so that way the team really appreciates, okay, what's actually possible, right? So when you think about selling your ideas, it's really about how do I create something that I can actually market to people. And through that whole process, right, of actually generating the idea and actually put it in the hands of people, of putting it in a situation where it's actually marketable, is what you need to think about when you want to sell as a designer. And really, it's not just about Figma prototypes or anything. It's really about how you take that idea to a position where people can appreciate it, and it involves a lot of things as well.
Excellent. Like I think I really appreciate that going beyond a certain obvious things and present it where people can actually see it's how bigger that idea could be. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think this is some excellent advice for many of the aspiring designers as well, because uh, it is often designing often perceived as pushing rectangles, which is also a part, but there are so many different variables attached to being a designer, at least nowadays. Earlier there were different roles, but you being a product designer, I think there are so many these variables, which basically helps you making that equation really great.
Yeah.
I think I'm done with all my questions. It's really great talking to you, James. I think I, after a long time, I had a really good, relatable, empathized conversation being a designer with a designer. And thank you so much for your time. And thank you. And I think Mintlify is doing some really great work. Such a simple product, but a really great design, distinguished. And I was actually, before I was going to for that hackathon, I was looking through Mintlify. Actually, I got introduced his way before by
Yeah.
one Chaudhary, and that's when I saw the uh, product and everything, and it was so polished, and uh, it's really hard to design simple things. Uh, and and when I got to know about you, I was so intrigued that I wanted to talk to you, and I just messaged you, and I'm so glad you responded and agreed to talk to me today. So thank you so much for that, and I wish you really all the best whenever you are in SF. Would love to catch up, and yeah, thank you so
Abs-
much.
Absolutely. And thanks for the opportunity. And yeah, I think Mintlify has like an incredible team of people who are really willing to support each other. So it just makes things happen. And yeah, also honored to meet you and speak with you.
Cool. Thank you so much.